r/AskReddit. What was the most shocking thing you heard the quiet kid say? In middle school, the quiet kid, Steven, had an arch rival, Robbie. In class, Robbie always seemed to come out on top of their little scuffles. Mostly because Steven couldn't really formulate or execute a burn or a comeback. He just rolled over and let Robbie get his insults in until the teacher stepped in. One day I was walking behind Robbie after that class and Steven quietly crept up behind him. Before Robbie could even turn around, he got as close as possible and said, "If I was to come into your house and kill you while you were sleeping, I doubt anyone would even notice." Then he disappeared into the darkness of the science hallway. I don't remember the exact words, but that was pretty damn close. I was about 55% shocked, 30% laughing hysterically on the inside, and 15% terrified. Robbie never made fun of old Stevie again. In class we were studying genetics and one guy was being a real douche and the teacher couldn't get him to shut up. Then after discussing inbreeding and dogs, one quiet kid raises his hand and says, "So is this likely how Peter, douche, became so ducking retarded? I bet your grandmother got raped at Nanking. Jesus." We sat in the classroom in I think 5th grade. My friend had done a PowerPoint presentation about Eminem. He talked about that he lived in a trailer as a young boy, and the quiet, straight A student stands up and says, "Just like you," and asks to use the toilet. No one understood anything of what just happened. We live in North Europe. It's practically no one that lives in a trailer here. My friend didn't. I was best friends with the quiet kid in middle school. It wasn't so much shocking as the stupidest thing I've heard him say. He got this 1,000-yard stare all of a sudden and just said, "I can't remember what color my dog is." In high school, there was this really quiet girl named Grace. She was a pleasant person, but wouldn't say anything more than hi or sorry unless you asked her something. Even then, she'd appear terrified. It was at prom, and I was in the parking lot of the venue we had prom at. I lost her contact and had to run to my car to grab my glasses. In the parking lot, Grace was smiling and walking from her car. She looked at me, laughed, and said Ryan, her prom date, just fingered the duck out of me. I still laugh about it to this day. 72 virgins is nowhere near enough virgins for eternity. That's like a week's worth of virgins. Playing rugby, hooker fails completely at line out. Someone shouts jokingly, "Does anyone know any good hookers to replace Patrick?" Quietest guy on the team. Never hear him say anything. Maybe Patrick's mum can help. Proceed to fall on floor. Edit. Line out. Line in. It's all the same. In high school, I had first level Spanish with this kid who was super quiet. At the end of the year, we all had to give a speech in Spanish in front of the entire class. This mother ducker stood up and gave a speech, not in Spanish, but in a language that he had spent the entire year inventing. Fresh and innocent quiet girl on the spikes on top of German helmets from the war. They look like painful butt plugs. I caught him looking at MLP porn on his phone. That was awkward. I went to middle school and high school with this boy named Daniel. Never once heard him say a word. A friend of mine said he would whisper sometimes. The night of our senior party we heard some music coming over from the corner where the karaoke machine was set up. At first no one really noticed him because people had been singing on it all night and most people stopped paying attention. But this was different cause no one was singing and the music was playing. The DJ stopped the music and started the song again. Daniel was standing there looking frightened, but this time around when the song started he began to sing. Everyone in the room stopped what they were doing and just crowded around him. He wasn't a great singer by any means, but 99% of the people in the room hadn't ever heard him talk. When the song was over everyone started clapping and cheering and he walked away with a big smile on his face. I was in marching band in HS, probably 7 years ago now, and we had this huge muscular guy as our brass instructor. He would always yell at us to nail these chords or you're not playing loud enough. There was this little Asian trumpet kid that was so innocent and nice. He barely ever spoke a word. One really hot afternoon, our instructor was being especially loud and said, "Why don't the trumpets blow hard enough?" Dead silence across the field as all the brass are waiting for next instructions. Then we hear, "Why doesn't your mom blow this dong hard enough?" from quiet trumpet kid. Needless to say, we all laughed. got push-ups and laughed some more. Quiet guy I worked with never said much until he came up to me and asked what happens when an Eskimo comes. Before I get the chance to respond, he throws a handful of ice at me and walks away. Nothing. Let me explain. I took a class with Sung Hui-cho, the Virginia Tech shooter, one semester before the shooting. The class was called Contemporary Horror. It was a one-time elective offered by my favorite professor. We read horror novels and watched horror films and discussed the craft of creating scary stories, but also how they reflected or represented their era's fears. It was a great class. There were only about 15 students and it was discussion heavy. Cho was one of them. I honestly never noticed him, even in that small class, until halfway into the semester. He wasn't quiet. He was silent. So on the day we all finally noticed him, our professor asked him something directly, and Cho just stared at him. I can't remember the question, but the nature of it meant silence was potentially an acceptable and funny response. So we all laughed, except Cho. He just kept staring at our professor. Our laughter awkwardly died, and after a few moments of uncomfortable silence, our professor just said, "Ooh, okay," and moved on. It was so strange, but I forgot about that weird moment until after his rampage. That professor later told me that Cho's papers had been disturbing, but the nature of our course meant the envelope was being pushed a bit, and it had never been bad enough to suggest he'd do what he did. That professor was a good man, and he admitted he struggled with not blaming himself on some level for one, not identifying how severe Cho's mental health problems were, and two, for the graphic and terrible nature of some of what we watched in that class, which may have inspired Cho. He knew that was bullshit, but a part of him couldn't help but feel some blame. It was terribly sad. Edit. Added the second para. Wow, literally this question came at a perfect time. I was just thinking about this and it was by far in sophomore year of high school. This kid was so odd that honestly no one ever really noticed him. But one day he's sitting across from me at a table and he sees this one girl in really tight shorts and goes, "Goddamn, I could have my head up her ass for months." It was pretty shocking. My a-hole is this big while making a circle with her fingers. Edit. Lots have asked how big it was. It was probably the size of a euro. Not too big, not too small, just like Goldilocks' a-hole. I'm sure it was just right. And no, unfortunately I did not check the Olay turd cutter out. I've failed you, Reddit. I'm sorry. I feel like an a-hole. About this big. I'll ducking rape you. He said it under his breath when a cute girl walked by. Apparently he had a crush on her. Quiet kid sneezes. Boy behind her. God bless you. Her God isn't real. In kindergarten, there was this kid, Donatel, and he never said a word. He was nice enough, played games and everything, but completely silent. One day we were looking out the classroom window as a cop drove by. Donatel opens his mouth and says police car. At the time, we were all excited to hear him speak, but looking back, that kid must have had some real dark history. This douchebag kid who constantly ducked with people was in line with the quiet kid and the quiet kid's friend. The quiet kid is a bit overweight, so when he gets up to the lunch lady and gets his chicken nuggets, the douchebag says, "You don't want extra nuggets, big guy?" The quiet kid out of nowhere just starts ranting. "No, I am all set, but what are you up to this weekend? You wanna hang out, grab some food, maybe duck a bit? I like to be on top and you look like a bottom. What do you say, wanna duck tonight?" The entire line is dead silent. The douchebag starts getting all pissed off and acting like he's gonna start a fight, and the quiet kid says, "Okay fine, you can be top, baby." The douchebag kid leaves to the entire line laughing their asses off at his expense. No idea if the quiet kid was gay or he just knew that even jokingly suggesting the douche kid was a homosexual would upset him more than anything. But I do know he left the line with his delicious chicken nuggets and a huge smile on his face. Our quiet kid was Tommy. Tommy never said anything ever. Out of all the lunches we ate at our table senior year, I think Tommy was the only one who never told a story or even added anything to the conversation. He just always sat in the same spot along the wall eating his lunch and laughing occasionally at our jokes. One day we were sitting in the cafeteria eating lunch and sharing stories like we always do. My friend Raymond had spent the previous night with a girl named Haley. She was 2 years younger, but already had a reputation of hooking up with a lot of different guys. So he was telling us everything that went down. Kind of bragging. Even though nobody was really impressed as we were aware of Haley's reputation. Anyways, Raymond gets done telling his story, then proceeds to pull out his sandwich. I think it was some sort of fish. It didn't look very appealing to Raymond or us. So he says this looks disgusting, but I'll give it a try anyways and proceeds to take a bite. In pipes Tommy, "Is that what you said about Haley last night?" Everyone explodes into laughter, drawing the attention of the entire cafeteria. Raymond is just sitting there, mid-bite, stunned. I'm bent over in pain from laughing. Others are on the floor. One guy ran to the bathroom because he thought he was going to puke from laughing. Even Ray had to laugh. I never noticed him laugh, but Tommy had this sly grin on his face the rest of the lunch hour. "Kid, I've never heard you say anything loudly. You need to shout something out." "Quiet kid." "What? Kid, shout something." In the middle of a classroom, a full-blown high-pitched roar is heard. "Quiet kid. Christmas." It was a Muslim kid who didn't even celebrate Christmas. What a dude.